I wasn't able to play Timberborn when it first came out in early access, but I've managed to get it now. There's no need to rush when picking up a game this good, and believe me, this is a good game. Since you are here, why don't you leave a like, a comment, or even better, subscribe to the channel for more indie content just like this one. It helps a lot. Thank you. Timberborn is a city builder, one of my favorite game genres, and in this one, humanity has long since moved on, leaving the beavers as anthropomorphic figures who are left to rebuild their advanced civilization. With a much more epic musical choice than I was expecting in a game that turned out to be so slow, there were even times that reminded me of Europa Universalis. I admit that there is always that background noise that keeps us company on occasions when we are forced to wait for the construction of some building or for our steamed sage to generate more science points that allow us to reach the next evolution. The game has two playable factions, one more naturalistic, another more industrial. The only real difference are in the endgame, but until most of our evolution we play very similarly. Honestly, the biggest practical difference between the two is that in one of them it is enough to build new houses for the beavers to immediately start reproducing, while in the other we have to build a structure that later generates them and allows gestation to take place. It seems that this is the evolution we are moving towards to, or rather, towards which the beavers are moving to. As you would expect, a game in which beavers are the centerpiece could not lack dams and water, and both play fundamental roles in our development, since dams allow us to maintain water points in times of drought, moments that gradually become more severe, and water is, in addition to keeping the entire ecosystem alive and luxuriant, for a long time our greatest source of energy, essential for some buildings to work. There are other ways to generate energy, but they either require a lot of science points to be unlocked, or they require the employment of a beaver that can become useful in other functions. Population management is extremely important, since in one of the factions it is very easy to overpopulate our village, forcing us to scale production immensely at a stage when our development does not need such a large workforce, and with the other faction there's the risk of letting aging and dying the population in a drastic way without realizing it. This management may not seem important, but considering that each building needs a certain number of workers, it is completely unnecessary to have a large number of unemployed beavers who only eat but, like the others, need to see their needs met. On the other hand, there is a risk of dropping the population to a point where it is difficult to have someone to work and we waste a lot of time recovering, and in that time the game is progressing, the droughts are becoming more drastic, and we are not developing at all. Anyway, the second time you play with any of the factions, this is no longer a problem, since you will then know what to do. Another particularity of this game is the investment in vertical construction, with many of the buildings being able to be stacked on top of each other. Although I'm not a big fan of this way of playing, nothing forces us to do it. There is enough area for all the buildings, since there is a huge area that is not so easy to use for anything else other than that, building buildings. However, we have to recognize the merit and the very interesting constructions that this method allows. All it takes is some creativity in managing the placement of structures and accesses to higher levels, as it is not enough to place the structures. Our beavers also have to be able to access them. In Timberborn, everything has to be connected via a road and, if at different heights, also by stairs placed in the perfect position. It is with this placement of these stairs that is not always easy to work with, but also the way I saw very clever uses of space. We can create new districts that function as a completely autonomous village from the original one. More than we can, we are forced to do so since our village cannot reach every location on the map, and if we need a resource that is not within its radius of influence, we are forced to create a new one. With this, the issue is that the resources are not naturally shared between villages. It is necessary to maintain a functioning exchange post which, in its most basic form, sends subsistence goods to one side and to the other the resources necessary for evolution. In everything else, the mechanics are as expected in a city builder with the aspects of a colony simulator. We start with the basic resources available on the map and gradually build on these resources to produce more differentiated buildings and so on. The interplay between the particularities I've already mentioned and the conventional gameplay is what creates this unique image for the game. There are no predators or wars, our enemy is the dry period for which we have to prepare ourselves to. Also, our enemy is the time that the game takes to go. Something that can be lessened if we play it at a faster speed and build some structures in excess, which makes it, even in that, very versatile. Now I have to come to the corner of complaints about cloud saves. Timberborn has this functionality, but like in games as Football Manager, it fails a lot of times. I don't know why this happens, but in these games, and for someone like me who needs to play on two different computers, it becomes a hindrance not only because of the loss of progress, but because at its extreme form it prevents us from accessing content that we had already unlocked. As I don't know where this problem comes from, I didn't consider it, but if it comes from Valve or Mechanistry, the game's developers, these kinds of problems will become increasingly notorious with the proliferation of mobile game solutions such as Steam Deck, for example. Timberborn is not just an idea or a concept as I so often see here and there. Timberborn is an excellent city builder that, while not the most dense and complex in its content, it is very creative in the way it's conceived, while also being challenging enough for those who don't like easy games. It's impossible not to recommend a game as good as this one, so if you like the genre, go on and get it. See you next time, guys. Bye!